Permanent Ink by Maxine on AO3. Chapter 11. They officially ended things 2 days after Kaminari's birthday. It was July 1st. A fresh start to a new month, as Kaminari put it. It was also the start of the 2-week countdown to Deku's birthday. You nervous yet? Kaminari asked. They were in the common room, freshly showered and lounging around on the couches after a particularly grueling battle training class that afternoon. Katsuki scowled. Absolutely fucking not, he said, which was only partially a lie. He felt angsty more than anything, to the point where he wasn't sure if he'd be able to sit still for the next 14 days. It was annoying. You sure? It's okay if you are. Would you shut up already? Katsuki said, exasperation evident in his tone, and Kaminari snickered. He was playing his stupid handheld game again, but this time, Katsuki was sitting cross-legged several feet away instead of being pressed up against him. There was no watching over his shoulders from the spot in the corner of the sofa, and he was steadfastly ignoring that the space between them felt a little weird. Unlike Katsuki, Kaminari had his newly acquired soulmate words on full display. He kept glancing down at them every few minutes, as though if he checked often enough, then the name would also appear, written into itself onto his skin. It was something he'd been doing since the words had first appeared 2 nights ago. The sentence crawled on his arm apparently wasn't anything that had been said yet, but according to Kaminari, there was something about it that felt familiar. The phrase, maybe, or the imagined tone that would accompany it one day. He said he couldn't really explain it, but not knowing who his soulmate was hadn't seemed to dampen his spirits any. Sarah and Mina wandered into the room from the kitchen, their arms laden with drinks and snacks. There are other birthdays in July, you know, Mina said, pouting in an exaggerated way. She dumped her haul on one of the coffee tables, and settling on the floor before passing around the bottles of sports drinks. Seriously, Sarah threw himself onto the couch between Kaminari and Katsuki. I know we're lacking in drama, but maybe try to spare some excitement for the rest of us. We can do that after the 15th, Kaminari said, leaning over to grab a bag of chips from Sarah. Not our fault you two are at the ass end of the month. Sarah let out a noisy sigh. What a shame that we won't know Kirishima's words until October, he said loudly, and Mina spun around to smack his shin. Friendly reminder that my acid can eat right through your clothes if I feel the need to punch your dick. Katsuki snorted. Nice. I mean, Sarah raised his eyebrows and made a very obvious attempt to shift away from her. I feel like you can leave my pants intact for that. But that takes all the fun out of it, Mina gripped, giving him a bright grin. Scary, Kaminari muttered. He turned off his game and set it aside. Where is Kiri anyways? Wasn't he with you guys? Midoriya accosted him from the kitchen, Zero said. Something about being his sparring partner tomorrow? The fuck? Katsuki frowned. Why? He mentioned practicing his kicks, Mina replied, then demonstrated the opposite of that by punching the air in front of her twice. He needed someone solid to go up against. Katsuki did his best not to look insulted by that. It wasn't like he and Deku really partnered up in class all that much anyways. They usually stuck to their extra sessions with All Might. Mina would also like someone solid to go up against, Zero said, teasingly, leaning at her. And Mina snapped her still balled up fist backwards and croaked him in the kneecap. Zero gasped and reached down to clutch it. Ow! Son of a bitch! Why you gotta poke the bear, dude? Kaminari asked. Mina just stuck out her tongue at them. Try it again, she said. One more time, I dare you. No, I'm good, Zero said weakly, still rubbing his knee. Sincerest apologies, I swear. Uh-huh. She dared you, Katsuki said. He stretched a foot out to nudge Zero's thigh. Say some other stupid shit. I want to see her kick your ass. Mina beamed and held up her hand expectantly. Katsuki eyed it for a second or two, then relentlessly gave her the most apathetic high five of all time. Wow, you really need to work on that, she said, and Katsuki rolled his eyes just as Kirishima and Deku walked into the room. Mina, hit me, Kirishima called, holding his hand up. She relented her smile to him. Flavor? Blue. Blue is not a flavor, Sarah insisted, staring up at the familiar argument amongst their group. Mina tossed Kirishima one of the blue sports drinks. It is so, Kaminari said immediately. It's printed right on the bottle, Kaminari added, and Sora groaned. Everything should be blue flavor. Deku leaned over the back of the couch near Katsuki, smartly ignoring the others. Hey, Kachan, can I borrow you for a minute? That halted the bickering as all four of his idiot friends took the opportunity to unsettlably swing their heads around to stare at him. Katsuki hated all of them. He possibly hated Deku more, though, because he had his hair pulled back into a stupid tiny ponytail again. Only this time, he added a hairband to hold up all the wild strands that were trying to escape the elastic. It was a look that made Katsuki's stomach flip, for some fucking reason. He kind of wanted to bury his hands into that thick, curly mess. Kachan? Yeah, I'm coming, Katsuki said quickly, pushing past the couch. Deku waved goodbye to the others, and Katsuki shot them a glare, trying not to notice their raised eyebrows and smirks, before he followed Deku over to the staircase. Where are we going? My room, Deku said, and Katsuki's stomach performed some unwanted aerobalistics. I wanted to show you something. Katsuki hadn't actually been in Deku's room before. He tried to imagine what it would look like, putting from his childhood memories and general knowledge of everything Deku, his brain supplied him with an over-the-top All Might extravaganza, which he then mentally tried to tone down. Deku was a nerd, but he was nearly 17. He probably didn't... Oh. Deku had pushed into his room, and Katsuki came to an abrupt halt in the doorway. Okay, well, never mind then. Holy shit, he croaked out, bringing a hand up so that he had something to hide his snicker behind as he looked around. What the fuck? Deku, did you buy out an entire museum? I know it's a lot, Deku said, standing in the middle of a room with his hands propped up his hips. He didn't look the least bit embarrassed. Katsuki assumed anyone who had ever stepped foot into this room made some kind of comment, so he probably was used to it, or just plain over it. Katsuki didn't know why he thought, even for a second, that Deku would display less memorabilia nowadays, when his collection had lately grown exponentially over the years. He remembered what his room back home used to look like, after all. I didn't even bring most of the really expensive stuff. Katsuki finally moved forward into the room, absently shutting the door behind him. Where's your Bronze Age poster? His feet took him straight over to the numerous figures lined up in the bookshelf, and he ran his eyes over them, trying to spot anything new. Deku let out a distressed sound. It ripped, he said mournfully, when I tried to take it off my wall. That sucks, Katsuki murmured, distracted by the limited edition young age figurine that he himself hadn't been able to get his hands on. The heck? It really does. I taped it back together, but it's still at home. Didn't want to get it more ruined. Katsuki mumbled, lifting his gaze to look around the rest of the room. He paused on a different poster that Deku definitely had before. Deku? He took a step forward until he was next to Katsuki. Katsuki pointed at the 10th anniversary poster on the wall. Where the heck did you get that? Oh, Deku laughed sheepishly, scratching the back of his head. That was, Sir Night-Eye's. They gave it to me after he... Wow, Katsuki looked over at him, eyebrows arching, a smile curling onto his face. You stole All Might's sidekick's never on sale for the public poster after he kicked it? Deku sputtered, his face going red. No, Kachan! No, I didn't steal it. The agency gave it to me. Sure, Katsuki donned. Kachan! I'm surprised you don't have a framed autograph of All Might yet, Katsuki said, before Deku could keep denying that he granted a dead hero's specialty merch. You should get him to sign the poster. Imagine how rare that would be. Actually, he signed my notebook back when, well, Deku shifted his weight nervously, when he first came to town. Ah, so the day of the sludge villain incident. Got it. Katsuki jerked his eyes away with a slight grimace. But it's in one of my notebooks, Deku continued quickly, on the verge of babbling. The one you exploded, so the pages are kinda... It doesn't matter, I should get him to sign something else that I could actually display. I guess it's sort of weird now, though, since we see him every day. Katsuki frowned a little, his eyebrows drawn down. He remembered the notebooks, of course. If Deku still had some of the really old ones, then more than a fair share of the pages would be taken up by Katsuki's own sketches and doodles, when he exploded one of them, those dumb things. So there's where you draw the line? He asked, rather than dwell on it. Maybe there's been one in Deku's backpack one of those times he'd stolen it and tossed it around with his lackeys. Playing keep away from Deku shit hadn't exactly been an uncommon occurrence. Katsuki shoved the memory away and gestured around the room. Asking for a fucking autograph is too much, but this? Stop, Deku said, chuckling. I can't help, I'm still a fan. What did you want to show me? Or did you just want to show off? Oh, Deku rushed over to his closet and started digging around inside. Katsuki trailed after him, curiously pegged, despised himself. He wasn't expecting Deku to turn around and thrust a slightly shabby old All Might plushie at him. Look! Katsuki blinked at it, uncomprehendibly for a moment until recognition hit. Oh shit, he said, reaching out to take it. Is that... It's yours, Deku said excitedly. The one you lost. You mean the one you stole? Katsuki asked dryly. He turned the plushie over his hands, eyeing the slightly faded colors and worn fabric. It's definitely seen better days. Deku lifted his eyebrows. Actually, you dropped it behind the couch. It was stuck between the back of it and the wall for years. I didn't find it until we got a new one. Katsuki scoffed. I didn't drop it. You definitely did. I wasn't allowed to touch it, remember? Well, duh, Katsuki had carried this stupid thing around for him for a solid year after winning it from a raffle at a summer festival, when he had been like 4. It was kind of embarrassing to remember, but he was pretty sure he'd dragged it everywhere, specifically because Deku was upset he didn't have his own. He cried when Katsuki had won it, and even thought Inko would eventually buy him a similar plushie. Katsuki had made sure Deku knew it wasn't the exact same. Deku's wasn't a prize, which meant Katsuki was better. Katsuki had managed to be a little shit even at that young age, but Deku had been so damn jealous that he's gotten some kind of weird thrill from it. What I remember is that I brought it to your house, and 1 second it was there, and then the next your grubby little hands had it hidden somewhere, Katsuki said stubbornly, repeating the same old story he made himself believe a decade ago. Deku just rolled his eyes. You're welcome, he said, voice edging with sarcasm. So, what, you just been hanging on to it for years? Well, I couldn't exactly give it back to you in junior high, could I? Deku shrugged. I picked it up the last time I was home, but if you don't want it... He stretched out a hand, like he was going to take the plushie back, and Katsuki recoiled sharply and spun out of the way. No, it's mine, he said immediately, and then promptly felt his face flush. Deku tried to snuffle his snot, which made Katsuki's cheek burn even more, but then he couldn't stop the self-deprecating laugh that escaped him. Don't worry, Deku said, practically giggling outright. I'm not gonna cry all over you for not letting me hold it this time. Shit, take all the fun out of it, why don't you? Katsuki stepped away, moving towards Deku's bed and dropping onto it. He gave the All Might plushie another scrutch-lazing look. His face looks fucking stupid like this. Deku sat next to him, barely leaving a few inches between them. It's actually kind of terrifying. They really exaggerated that smile. It's so weird he's our teacher, Katsuki murmured. He forgot sometimes just how amazing that really was. He was so used to it by now, so accustomed to seeing the man nearly every day, that it was almost hard to remember how awestruck by him he'd once been. His admiration for All Might had lodged deep into his chest from such a young age, burned him up from the inside and consumed him for years. It was the spark that had ignited all of his motivations, made him work so hard to get where he was. His feelings surrounding All Might were somewhat complicated now, tinged with guilt and shame and a twist kind of jealousy that he absolutely hated. Because logically, he knew it was stupid as fuck. It was unwarranted and misplaced and ugly. He didn't need All Might's quirk, and it didn't matter that All Might had chosen Deku. But he couldn't stop the small part of him that sometimes wanted to snarl at the very idea that Deku had been gifted this unbelievable power. Deku wouldn't be here without it, though. He wouldn't be aiming for the top, fighting both against along Katsuki every day, and forcing himself to stretch the limits of his own abilities beyond what he'd ever thought possible. Katsuki couldn't imagine doing this without him. He didn't want to do without him, which was maybe the most shocking thing of all. I'm really happy we're here, Deku said softly, and for a second Katsuki wondered if he'd unlocked some kind of mind-reading quirk in the last 5 minutes. But then Deku made a jerky kind of movement with his hands, gesturing between the two of them as his face went pink. And I don't just mean here, like at UA, with All Might, but this. I'm glad we could talk like this now. Zap. Katsuki said, his voice a low, warm rumble. Deku grinned and swayed side by side to bump their shoulders together. Maybe a little, he said, and then, how are things going with Kaminari? Because apparently being fucking friendly meant Deku thought he could keep prying into Katsuki's relation, or lack thereof. He huffed out an exaggerated breath. Great. We broke up. The grin dropped off of Deku's face so fast that there had been an anchor attached to it. What? He cried out, lurching forward into Katsuki's personal space. Katsuki leaned away before he could stop himself. When? About. He made a show to check the non-existent watch in his wrist. 2 hours ago. Oh, Deku frowned. He looked so goddamn concerned that it actually had Katsuki's shoulders hunching around his ears, and he could just barely refrain from baring his teeth at the other boy. I'm sorry, Katsuki scowled. It's fine, he said loudly. It was a fucking mutual or whatever. I told you, we weren't that serious. Still, Deku peered at him. Was it because of his words? I thought he'd said that he didn't know who his soulmate was. He doesn't, Katsuki shrugged, his grip tightening at the All Might plushie still in his lap. It's not a big deal. We knew it wasn't gonna last. Shut up about it already. You guys were so good together, though. You sure didn't fucking think that when you first found out, Katsuki snapped. More to get him back other than anything. Deku paled, though, which wasn't kind of unexpected. I was just surprised, he fumbled to explain, eyes snickering away from Katsuki's face. I didn't mean to. You were teasing me about Uraraka. I got defensive, that's all. It's not that I really didn't want to think about you two. A beat passed, and the exaggerated face on Deku's slipped into a near panic. Wait, no, not that I wanted to think about you either. I mean, shit, wait. Katsuki slowly raised an eyebrow at him, very deliberate. Is now a good time to remind you about all your damn questions regarding my sex life, since you definitely don't think about that, ever. Your lack of one, you mean, Deku quickly threw back at him, though he couldn't stop his cheeks from flushing a bright red. Whatever, you nosy fuck, Katsuki murmured. What does that even mean, anyways? What? Deku said, warranted. That we're good together. You keep saying that. Oh, well, Deku eyed him for a moment. You're more open, and you're letting me sit next to you. The fuck? Katsuki browed furrowed, mostly out of confusion. Where else would you sit? That was a dumb question, though. There was an extreme empty chair over by Deku's desk. Like 3 feet away? Deku murmured, gesturing towards the end of the bed. Oh, or that. It was true. They both needlessly sat on the same end of the mattress. Shit. Well, he started to say, flustered and irritated, but Deku interrupted him. Both of them have been wearing you down since first year. Kaminari and Kirishima, you're not nearly as closed off as you used to be. You let people touch you now. Deku cringed a bit as soon as the words left his mouth. That sounds weird, but you know what I mean. It's like there's this unbreachable permit around you before. But now it's starting to go away, and I think being with Kaminari just took it a step further. Now you know what being in a relationship can be like, and you know it's okay to let yourself want that kind of contact with someone, right? Like that time on the couch. You and that fucking day with us on the couch. Katsuki forced out, feeling hot and uncomfortable and a little too seen. He had his arms wrapped around his stomach, unknowingly squeezing the All Might plushie against himself. Kachan, you were cuddling, Deku said, overly serious with such an innocent statement. It was both adorable and really surprising. Katsuki groaned and collapsed backwards on Deku's bed. He covered his face with the plushie. Adorable? Fuck. Kill me now. It's not a bad thing. Says you. No, I mean, everything. All of this. Katsuki shifted the plushie just enough so that he could see Deku from behind it, and Deku grinned at him. It's just a different kind of personal growth. Katsuki was just about his limit for earnest Deku babbling today. He wasn't sure how to address all of that. Couldn't think of any kind of worthy reply. Not that Deku seemed to expect anything, but the silence hanging between them felt so easy somehow. Like they've reached a natural stopping point, and now Katsuki was just supposed to accept all of the bullshit Deku had spurted as truth, because he couldn't find the words to refuse any of it. He hefted out a sigh, lowering the plushie from his face and squinting against his chest. How are things going with Roundface? Deku blinked. What do you mean? She talking to you yet? Oh, no, not really. Deku's gaze lowered, and he stared at the floor. She's not going out of her way to avoid me or anything, but we're not It's still awkward. She'll come around, Katsuki said gruffly. Yeah. Date a guy next time. Less fucking drama. Deku laughed lightly. That's hardly true, he murmured, but then his hands clenched around the material of his shorts, and he drew in a long, slow breath. Katsuki was watching him and not bothering to hide it, so their eyes caught immediately when Deku turned his face. A few seconds ticked before he spoke again. Maybe I will, though. Katsuki was pretty sure he had stopped breathing for a minute. He couldn't speak. What the fuck? Where the hell had his brain gone tonight? What did that even mean? Deku was admitting he was. What? Katsuki flipped through his limited mental monologue of identifying terms and their definitions. Shit! He'd never really bothered to apply himself. Bisexual. That was one of them. Was he trying to tell Katsuki he was into girls and guys? Eventually, Deku looked away with no reply. Was forthcoming. He tripped his head over and smiled at the ceiling. Guess we'll see. I gotta go, Katsuki said abruptly, sitting up in a rush. Deku didn't look surprised. Katsuki scrambled off the bed and headed to the door. Thanks for the, he waved at the All Might plushie over his shoulder, thankfully at least somewhat in Deku's direction. Hey, Kachan? Ugh, he sounded so perfectly normal and happy. Fuck, it wasn't fair that he could just blow up Katsuki's whole world and be so unaffected himself. Katsuki chanced a glance back at him, his gaze landing somewhere near Deku's left ear. He couldn't see the headband tucked just behind it, as well as a few stray curls making their bid for freedom from his ponytail. Katsuki swallowed. What? We should do something over the summer break, Deku said briefly. I know we're spending most of it on our work studies, but we get a few days off, right? So we should go hiking or something. Hiking? Katsuki repeated slowly. Deku nodded. Yeah, I'm sure you know good places. Of course I do, Katsuki grumbled. Summer break. When was that? It started the week after Deku's birthday, right? It seemed an eternity away. So we'll go? Deku prompted, and Katsuki couldn't stop himself from nodding. Sure, whatever, he said, and then slipped out of the room before Deku answered smile could somehow fuck him up even more. You know, you would think you'd learn new words from school, the workplace, from home, not from a fucking fanfic. Across. I didn't know what across meant beforehand, and now I know what across means and how to say it. It is so weird that I'm learning new words and how to pronounce shit through fanfiction. A whole new level. Also, Deku having a room full of All Might merch is canon, and also, he's a nerd. He is a nerd, and you know what, Deku? Me too. Not a nerd of All Might. I hate All Might. How much I despise him. I know, hot take, hating All Might. I just don't like him. He's something, and I don't like that something. The 10th anniversary All Might poster. Either he stole it, the agency actually gave it to him, or Sir Night-Eye put it in his will that Deku gets it. But somehow, in my mind, I think the most funniest out of all those three is that Deku went in there after Sir Night-Eye died and just snatch. Okay, so the talk that Bakugo and Midoriya were having inside Midoriya's room, it was very interesting. I really liked this chapter a little more than I liked the hangout chapter when Deku broke up with Uraraka, because I don't know, just something about their chemistry. And like Deku has a point. Bakugo has matured. You could see it. It's very slight, but you could see that there is movement going on. And I don't know, I just like their little back and forth. It felt so fluid. I really like the dialogue of this chapter. It felt so natural, normal, so flowing. My best friend who made my profile picture is doing art commissions for just $10. If you're interested, contact them on Discord at Roji. That is RROJI. As always, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night, join our community server, link in the description, subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.